You know, we do perspectives on this channel. So, what is the Mississippi State perspective in this football game? We talked to Jake Wimberly. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, and I am likely the only person that you're going to hear from today that had an office in the Manning Center at Ole Miss and worked in the national media for Yahoo Sports. Thank you for joining us. Today on the show, we have Jake Wimberly talking about the Mississippi State perspective on this year's Egg Bowl, and everydayers know how I feel about this game and how I can't believe this season is actually ending. Anyway, as I mentioned, I'm Stephen Willis, and this is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are free and available on all podcast apps and YouTube. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy. So the Egg Bowl is coming up in about 36 hours from whenever this premieres at 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. And we're in the final countdown, as you know, basically Job from Arrested Development, and getting ready for that game. And there's probably some things in Mississippi State's sleeves. It's going to be a game that's about 40, 45 degrees at kickoff. It's going to be interesting to see if State's front seven can neutralize the Ole Miss running game like they did a year ago. Can Ole Miss run the football on them? And it is interesting to get their mindset because they're going through, honestly, a situation similar to what Ole Miss went through last year. Even though Lane is still at Ole Miss, there's still the uncertainty that is surrounding this game. And we'll see exactly how that goes with them looking for the replacement for Zach Arnett. What will that matter? Is the bowl streak such a really big deal, even though they went with like 3 wins one year or something like that? We'll see exactly how that goes. But we're going to talk with Jake Wimberly and find out exactly what's going on. So let's go. Jake Wimberly from 105.9, 106.3. You wear a lot of hats, buddy.
It's quite a few, right? I mean, you know this. I mean, it's the media business is a lean business, and we're blessed to have 2 different sports stations. They offer a little bit of different variety for people. So, we try to keep them both humming. How's everything going, my man? What's going on, Steven?
Oh, it's going on. Having a lot of fun here. I mean, Locked On Ole Miss has grown like a weed. We've gone over 5,400 subscribers, and it just continues to blow up. Honestly, by next year, we plan on being like the most subscribed YouTube channel on the Ole Miss beat, essentially. So it's all good right now. How about you?
No, that's fantastic. Oh, everything's great. Everything's great. And look, it doesn't help that, or it doesn't hurt that you got a winning football team too. That winning cures everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny that I talk about to Ole Miss fans. It's like, hey, don't overlook what's happening right now. Everybody likes to put Johnny Vaught on a pedestal, and that little era. Ole Miss is kind of living like a B-, B+ version of that right now.
Yeah, no, I would say you're right. I mean, what Lane Kiffin has been able to do over the last several years, I mean, you think about it. I mean, we forget he came in like Mike Leach, rest in peace, and some of these other coaches during COVID, and had a lot to deal with. All these coaches did, but no, what he's done has been phenomenal. It's been fun to see.
You know, looking at this Egg Bowl game tomorrow night, as this is going to air on Wednesday, what are the main storylines that Mississippi State might have going into this game?
Well, I think there's several. One, obviously, an interim coach trying to get a win in the Egg Bowl. That's we've seen that before, but it's been very few far in between. Will Rogers, essentially, this will be his last game as a Mississippi State Bulldog. We'll see what the next chapter holds. Transfer portal, he does have some time that he can go somewhere else and play, or does he decide to hang the cleats up? So that will be his last Egg Bowl, his last football game. I think if you look at it, obviously the coaching search for Mississippi State, what is, Zach Selman thinking? Where is he at? People striking planes and doing all that stuff. So, for Mississippi State, I mean, obviously I think it's about, doing the best you can. Obviously, they try to love to get a win. The other storylines of kind of changing the guard at quarterback, changing the guard at coach, and then what does 2024 bring for this team?
Yeah, there's a lot of situations with the Mississippi State that, after the Mike Leach thing, it's just one of those things. Even Ole Miss fans can admit to this. Mississippi State just kind of made an emotional mistake after Mike Leach passed with the Zach Arnett thing. So it had to be done, but this will be Mississippi State's 5th head coach in 7 years. And no matter how you shake that's not a good area to be in modern college football, right?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you go back to when Dan Mullen left. I mean, the Joe Moorhead thing just did not materialize. It did not work. And then, of course, Mike Leach, the passing of Mike Leach, suddenly, I mean, that's, Mike doesn't pass away. He's still there, obviously, and who knows how much longer he would have coached. There was some, rumors out there that he was thinking about hanging it up, in the next year or two. And of course, you had to go with Zach Arnett. I think you're absolutely right because, I mean, it was an emotional hire, but we forget Mississippi State at that point didn't have an athletics director. John Cohen had moved on to Auburn. You were fighting the recruiting window that was coming up, the transfer window that was coming up. So, I think they made the best move in that, at that point in time based on the scenarios that were at play, but it just never materialized for Zach Arnett and it never worked out.
And this game, whenever you just look at it, for all the bluster of anything can happen and you can throw records out the window, 9 times out of 10, the more talented team wins this football game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big the other as far as the records are concerned. You're absolutely right. I mean, typically the more talented team wins. We remember all of the, and I say all, you can probably put them in 2 handfuls. We remember the wind-blown field goal in the Egg Bowl. We remember Bo Wallace fumbling into the end zone. We remember all those kinds of things, which are iconic in this rivalry. But you're right. Typically, the more talented team wins. And, you can try to do the old emotional card and stuff. But when you get between the lines and you get the ball game kicked off, it's all about talent and execution. And typically, like you said, the more talented team comes out on top in this game.
Yeah, and it's a situation, and I talked about it on my show earlier in the week, the biggest trap that favorites fall into, because I do think underdogs play this card up to give themselves some hope, is that you can throw the records out the window. It's anything can happen in this football game. Because what happens, and there's 1 out of 10, because like I said, 9 times out of 10, the more talented team wins. Once out of 10, they're going to play down to the competition. It's going to get close enough to where some of that weird stuff can happen. And whenever that happens, the Egg Bowl takes a backseat to no one in the whole country when it comes to that weird stuff. But you have to generally play down and even it up whenever that weird stuff needs to happen.
Oh, no, I typically would agree with that for sure. And, you get into a game like this on Thursday, there'll be some emotion. It's senior night, but everybody has that. I mean, everybody has a senior night. Everybody has an emotional night. And, I think once the game settles in, I mean, there's a lot that has to happen for Mississippi State to be competitive in this game and to keep this game close. Mississippi State, for whatever reason, never could figure this thing out offensively. The Kevin Barbay experience did not work. Obviously, you can't go change, your entire offense in the last week of the season. So you're kind of dealt with the hand that you're going to get. And, Mississippi State's had some injuries. They lack some playmakers and some offensive pop. And this, to me, is a bad matchup for Mississippi State on the fact that, you look at Mississippi State, they're leading the Southeastern Conference in completion percentage for quarterbacks. I mean, they've 70% completion percentage over the course of the season are right there at it. I mean, that is a high for Mississippi State in the last 25 years, which obviously we're throwing the ball more now than we ever have. But this team can't stop quarterbacks, and quarterbacks have had banner days throughout the year against this defense.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. We're just getting started. How can Ole Miss win this game? How about Mississippi State? How did they win this game? We'll talk about that next. But first, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's exciting and easy and the number one way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just simply pick more or less than 2 to 6 players on a stat projection sheet and watch the winnings flow in. With basketball season here, you can now pick a combo projection across football and basketball from the Specials League. The league created especially for these combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce. You're going at a 10.5 combo of 3-point field goals made and receptions. That's how that would work. Also, you can play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rappers Meek Mill and comedians Andrew Schultz. You can now find community plays under the promo tab to where you can view the entries from some of the biggest names in Prize Picks each week. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for the first deposit match up to $100. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit matchup to $100. It's daily fantasy sports made easy. Locked On has announced the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, covering 24/7 the top stories of the day, along with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering the league every single day. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Jack, this is a situation that we're kind of going to go back and forth, and we'll start with probably the more difficult question here is like, how does Mississippi State win this game?
I think for Mississippi State, you're going to have some help. You're going to have some help. First thing you got to do, and this sounds cliche, you got to play clean. You can't give Ole Miss the football. So, I mean, if you play it clean, that's going to obviously help. But then you're going to have some help. I mean, you got to turn Ole Miss over. I mean, you've got to turn them over. You either be it, an interception, a fumble, something on a special teams, and special teams play is going to have to be at a high rate too. So I think, obviously playing clean would be one thing that you got to do. You got to create some turnovers. Mississippi State hasn't done a lot of that this year. And then of course you've got to execute and you got to score when you get in the red zone. So to me, that is going to be the key. And then of course, try to put some pressure on Jackson Dart, something that Mississippi State, again, has had problems doing. Again, there's a lot of ifs and buts and candies and nuts for Mississippi State in this ballgame, but a lot of that has to go well if they're going to be in this game in the fourth quarter.
Do you think the weather is going to play a factor? It's going to be about 40, 45 degrees on Thursday night. I don't think the rain is going to still be in town. I think that has kind of moved out, but it feels like it might be a little bit cooler of a game, which leads to a line of scrimmage Egg Bowl, and which this game always seems to matriculate into. Can Mississippi State's front seven hold up against the Ole Miss offensive line and vice versa?
Yeah, the rain should be gone. It's going to be cooler. I don't know that the temperatures will bother anybody out there running around, but it could turn into a line of scrimmage game. And, I am sure that Ole Miss will probably want to establish the run in this game. If you look at what Quinshon Judkins has done in that backfield, and, if Mississippi State can turn Ole Miss one-dimensional, that kind of plays at least in their favor a little bit. But if Ole Miss is out there churning out yards with a run game, and of course they're doing things, obviously that opens up that passing game, then that defense is going to be in trouble. I mean, we've seen several offenses do it. I mean, LSU came in and they just picked their number. They just kind of named it. Alabama kind of did the same thing. Ole Miss, the way they play offensively, if Mississippi State, allows Ole Miss early to come out and get what we call chunk plays, chunk yards, 6 yards, 7 yards, 5 yards, and they're just ripping first downs off, it's going to be a long night.
Okay. The flip side of the point is, in this game, if Ole Miss wins the game, what happened?
I think if Ole Miss wins the game, I think you've seen that exactly happen. Ole Miss can kind of call their shot offensively. They're able to put themselves in second and short, third and short situations to where they can open the playbook up. And Jackson Dart has had a big day against the defense that really has been challenged and not done a great job of stopping the vertical passing game. So, if Ole Miss is able to do that and come out early and clicking on all cylinders offensively, running tempo, then it's going to be very tough for Mississippi State to stay in this ballgame.
So we'll get to projections in the next segment as well, but let's do a little bit of a Mississippi State coaching search, because there's not many names that we're hearing. We're hearing a few. We're hearing stuff like Jeff Lebby, and the Jamie Chadwell fake tweet was pretty funny, and the coaching search stuff. What is going on in the coaching search right now?
Zach Selman said in his press conference when he, talked about having a coaching search that, hey, the next time you hear from me will be when we hire a coach and we go to the podium. And he has stayed true to that. There's not been a whole lot come out of there. Now, over the last day or two, some inside that program have started throwing around names. I mean, obviously, you've got those names out there, the Gus Malzahns, the Jamie Chadwells, the Jeff Lebbys. I don't know that those names are real. We'll see. You're starting to hear Dave Dorian's name, kind of trickle out from NC State. You're starting to hear, Dave Clawson's name from Wake Forest and the ACC footprint. Those names come out. Obviously, Duke with Mike Elko, his name has started to surface. So, your guess is as good as mine. Let's put 10 names in a hat and shake it up, because I have no idea where Zach Selman is going to go on this. I would say this: if I was Zach Selman, I think he has to be looking for a couple things. One, a coach that can navigate and understands the importance of NIL in a collective, and two, the transfer portal. Not that you want to me, live like Colorado and Deion Sanders in the transfer portal, but I mean, you look at some of the big pickups Ole Miss has had in the transfer portal. You look around college football. I mean, there's opportunities to go get guys that can play immediately. But that ties back to, how much money do you have? And, can you go get those guys? And then three, somebody that understands offense. And you've got to have, I think, at Mississippi State, an offense that is not a traditional between the tackle, between the hashes type offense. And I feel like that's where this staff messed up this year, is they took a group of guys who won 9 ball games last year. They played a lot of football. They understand, the pitch and catch game. And then you're going to try to turn them into a bunch of guys that you play between the hashes. I feel like that was a colossal mistake for Mississippi State to do that. I think at State, you've got to play it differently. Mullen did it differently and was successful. Leach did it differently and he was successful. And I think the next coach is going to have to do it differently as well if they want to continue to be successful.
Yeah. And I think if Mike Leach would have, if this year would have happened for Mike Leach, this would be a completely different story and you'd be looking at a different ball club. But the way it sits and the decision that was made to go after that and the way they decided to do it, honestly, just sitting back looking at it, it looks like Mississippi State lost their identity offensively. And they play like they're kind of aimless and listless and things like that. And I think it's even Jackie Sherrill, the way he played offense, it was very specific the way he played offense. Whenever you move on to the Dan Mullen, it was like they knew exactly what they wanted to do. With stuff with Mike Leach, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. This year, it just looked like, we're going to try a little bit of this, we're going to try a little bit of that. And if you do that, I don't know if you can be successful in especially SEC football.
Oh, no, I agree with you 100%. I mean, you go back to the LSU game and, the first play of the ball game. And we know this. I mean, everybody knows this. All these coaches, they script their first be at 5, 10, 15 plays. So the guys know what they're going to run. First play of the ball game. I mean, they pulled 2 offensive linemen on the right side and a guy on the left side pulled, and they literally ran straight into each other. First play of the ball game. How does that happen on an SEC football team? I mean, that can happen on any city league Pee-wee team. That may even happen on a high school team from time to time. But you're talking about a Southeastern Conference football team on a scripted play, first play of the game. I agree with you 100%, Stephen. They look like they just don't know what they want to be, and I think you got to find that out with this next coach.
Yeah, and I think they're going to really hone in on that, and the next coach is going to be able to do that. I don't know. Do you think that it has to be a sitting head coach, or can you go the Dan Mullen route and get an assistant somewhere?
No, I think if you do it right, you can go get a good assistant. I never understood the Joe Moorhead hire, but yes, you can go get a good assistant. There's a lot of really good assistants. I mean, you look at what Oregon was able to pull with Dan Lanning out of Georgia. He's one example. I mean, there's a lot of examples out there of guys that were coordinators. Mike Elko at another at Duke from Texas A&M. So you can go grab a guy. It's just how good are you at identifying, those guys that can go from, the booth to the sideline and the CEO of your program. Lane Kiffin, obviously, I mean, he kind of had that mixture. I mean, he was at Alabama. We know that, highly successful offensive coordinator. Also ran the program well at FAU. So, you can go find that guy that maybe has dabbled in some head coaching at a lower level, but also an offensive coordinator as well.
Yeah, it should be quite interesting to see exactly what Mississippi State does either way. There's still more to come on the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We give our predictions, and will there be a surprise? Stay tuned for that. I do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That is why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn helps you find the right team for your team faster and for free. We're 20 years into this at this point. Everybody knows how to create a social media profile. Go to LinkedIn and create that social media profile. Then you can add your job and a purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're in fact hiring. They have simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. If you hire the right team member to your team, it can have a positive and measurable impact on your business. Hiring somebody for your business is no different than your favorite college hiring a football coach. If you hire the wrong guy, you're going to be doing it again in 3 years. If you hire the right guy, you might be in the playoff conversation. The same thing happens in your local business. If you hire the wrong person, you might be doing this in 3 weeks, not 3 years. If you hire the right person, they can have that positive and measurable impact on your business. It's why small businesses rate like LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day, and shout out to the everydayers. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you with 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories of the day and the local experts on the Locked On network, plus our national shows covering every league. For your second listen, go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube today and subscribe to be a member of the first ever national sports 24/7 YouTube channel. Be part of history. That's actually a really cool deal. All right, Jack. So we're getting ready for Egg Bowl, and I'm doing interviews with a lot of the people that are associated with Ole Miss football during this week, and especially outsiders, because I'm always really like Michael Borky from Super Talk. He got dropped in from South Carolina. So what was it like for somebody on the outside to be dropped into this rivalry? And I got to share a story. Like my first game was Steve Sloan's last. The Mississippi State won in '82. That game, that was my first Egg Bowl. But the second game I went to was the Immaculate Deflection. And I got to go like moment by moment what actually happened and the Artie Cosby stuff and the both sides going absolutely ballistic for a game-winning play. What memories of this game stands out to you?
Wow, a lot. One, the wind-blown field goal for sure. I think if I go back on the Mississippi State side, 1997 really sticks out. In 97 sticks out because, the stand, Billy Brewer, the stand in Oxford, that definitely sticks out. Lynn Ross, I remember know him well, was from Florence High School where I grew up and played on that team, was an unbelievable player for Ole Miss, obviously. And then, of course, you go to 1997, and that was the you kind of come up the stands there in the stands, and you got the big brawl going on out on the field, and Tommy Tuberville and Jackie Sherrill and the 2-point conversion that Ole Miss went to, Stuart Patridge. 98 stands out because of, Mississippi State winning the SEC West. 99, you kind of go chalk through that. Stands out because of, the immaculate kick, kick six and all the kind of stuff that happened there, that weird wonky game with Romero Miller. You get into the 2000s, obviously, Eli Manning with the success that he had. I can remember leaving Davis Wade Stadium in a torrential rainstorm because Eli Manning was just carving up Mississippi State. So there's a lot. And you get into the Dak Prescotts and the Bo Wallaces and, just the things that we have seen over the last few years. I mean, there's so many memories to this game and so many highlights that you can go back and say, and I think both State and Ole Miss fans, I know a lot of people like to say, oh, it's toxic and they can't get along in this. There's a lot of great history with this rivalry. Some of it is heartache on both sides, and some of it is celebration. And then that's just what, to me, makes it a beautiful thing, and why I think Mississippi State Ole Miss is one of the best rivals in college football.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I honestly, just because of what it means to the local people and how the rankings and the actual game itself, as far as what it means, doesn't mean anything to the people that just have the feelings up about the other team. It's a big deal. I mean, Mississippi State was created because dirt farmers were against Ole Miss. I mean, that is how this was born. This goes back to like 1878. It's a real thing. Now, one thing that I ask also to all the people is the game on Thanksgiving, because this is likely, and this hasn't been reported or told or anything, but I think this is likely the last year that this game is going to be on Thanksgiving, because next year it's going to go back to Texas and Texas A&M. I just think that's going to happen. What are your thoughts of this game on Thanksgiving?
I'm kind of indifferent. I know where a lot of people lie on it, and a lot of people are against it, and then a lot of people love it. I'm kind of indifferent, and the reason being, I guess, is because we don't have a massive family. I mean, we've got a nice sized family, but once lunch is done on Thursday, I mean, people are going to the deer camp, people are going here and there. And I say, hey, I can remember in the 90s when this thing was on Thanksgiving, let's go to Oxford or Starkville and watch the Egg Bowl. So, but I could see where it's a problem for people that have big families and have to do a lot of traveling, and, you want to make the game. So I'm kind of indifferent. I like Thursday nights, but I, can go watch it on Friday or Saturday. So I'm probably a little different than a lot of people on it.
Yeah. Should be real interesting. I'm a pro Thanksgiving person. I just love the fact that you do your Thanksgiving stuff. You do a couple of NFL games. I don't even care about the primetime NFL game. I can't tell you the last time that I watched that. And then it's just the Egg Bowl at 7:00 at night, 6:30 at night, and let's go. And then you're done with that game, and you can enjoy the football for the rest of the weekend instead of it being on Saturday and your whole day could be ruined. And all of a sudden you might not get to see a game that you were otherwise be interested in seeing just because you're so heartbroken. So I enjoy that aspect as well.
No, that makes sense. Absolutely. I mean, like you said, you get it done Thursday, you get to watch the Iron Bowl, you get to watch Ohio State, Michigan, you get to watch all these other games that happen on a fantastic weekend of college football.
Yep, absolutely. So let's get into predictions for this game. Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Davis Wade Stadium, Thursday night, ESPN. How do you see this game playing out?
It's a lot of energy. It's going to be exciting early, but I just feel like Ole Miss is too much to handle this year. I feel like, when you get into a team like Mississippi State that can't really, like we discussed, doesn't have an offensive identity. And look, Will Rogers is going to play his heart out. Mississippi State's going to play as hard as they can. But again, there's only so much you can do with what we've seen. And, the sample size of, it's a large sample size of what we've seen inside the Southeastern Conference. And this team really doesn't have anybody that scares you to death offensively. Conversely, defensively, they can't slow the pass down. I mean, there's, again, a lot of things to be fixed here. And I just feel like Ole Miss is going to be able to do what they want to do offensively. I feel like, run game and options, pass game options, they're going to be able to kind of really pick what they want to do. I've got Ole Miss winning this thing 38-17. I think Vegas has it around 11 points. That would take it. Of course, big sports gaming people over here is what we are. I'd say if you're playing the game, take Ole Miss, give up the points. I know a lot of people would shy away from that. I've got Ole Miss winning 38-17.
Yeah, the funny thing is that's actually pretty close to what I have. I had 38-14. And I think it's going to be a game that Ole Miss kind of jumps on it. And whenever you have an interim coach, it becomes a hope you can win, not an expect to win type situation. So as soon as something negative happens, it gets a little, that gap starts to show up. And I think Lane Kiffin is the best script writer in college football. If you're looking for something to watch for, watch and see if that first Ole Miss offensive drive, if Mississippi State gets a stop or if Ole Miss scores a touchdown, because that's probably going to determine a long way to go in this football game.
No, I would agree with you. I would agree with you. Again, I think it'll be a great atmosphere. If you're going to the ball game, it's going to be fun. Always enjoy cutting it on. But, for Mississippi State, I just think it's too much to ask this year. I think for them, I mean, obviously you want to go play 4 quarters and see what you can do. But I think it's more about the coaching search and trying to rebuild this football program.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Every day or tomorrow, we will do our traditional Why Ole Miss Wins episode, and we'll tell you all about that getting ready for this Egg Bowl game. For your second listen on Locked On, check out the First National Sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories along with the local experts of Locked On that make our national shows great. For your second listen, go to that channel and subscribe for the first ever National Sports 24/7 streaming channel. And for those of you on YouTube, we will send you there right now. Thank you very much, Jake Wimberly, and enjoy the Egg Bowl, everybody. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thanks so much.